Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this very, very special evening. I don't know where to begin. I really don't know where to begin. I'm so glad to see you all. This is an amazing occasion for us. I feel like at a wedding or something, and I've got to give a speech. I was trying to understand what exactly is happening here, and I recall a movie from the 50s called The Mouse That Roared. And I think this is what is happening here. We are the mouse that roared. And we are so pleased that our roar has attracted so much attention from all of you, as opposed to the movie. You may recall the movie. It's a small country in Europe going bankrupt, and they decide to invade the United States with the hope that if they lose the war, then the United States will rehabilitate the country. And so we have invaded Washington Square, hoping not to lose the war, but to be partners with a great university. And this has worked out perfectly. Thank you all for coming. This is a great honor for us all here at Haifa that you have made it. I welcome everybody is, of course, worthy of a particular and individual welcome, but I take the honor of welcoming John Sexton, who is sitting there at the back, and will be getting an honorary doctorate tomorrow. John, thank you so much for being here with us. John is going to be in the unusual position of not talking tonight and actually having the opportunity to listen to others who will, at this particular point, I will call them up and ask them to begin the evening with a fireside chat on their research and the application of their research to everyday life. It gives me it's an unbelievable honor to ask Danica Kahneman and Peter Salovey to come and warm themselves near the fireplace.
So good evening, everyone. We hope you can hear us. Danny and I decided not to talk about our research, but to talk really about something that's more current. Obviously, you all know Danny's research. I saw many of you brought Thinking Fast and Slow with you, and really field-changing work on decision-making, on the way in which outcomes in the world, objective outcomes in the world, are experienced subjectively. The work was has been so field-changing for economics as well as for psychology. And I'm someone who read that work and thought of ways that maybe we could apply it. We're not going to talk about it. I just mention it. When I ran a lab, I'm president of Yale University now, but when I ran a lab, relied on Danny's work with Amos Tversky to develop a way of trying to figure out how we could make messages about personal health more persuasive. Wasn't very much inspired by having read essentially everything that they had written up until that point. But rather than look back, we thought we would look forward and talk a little bit about new application of artificial intelligence that is making waves. And maybe Danny could start.
Well, I think a lot of people are very excited this week. For some of us, these are the biggest news of recent weeks, that there is a new piece of software, ChatGPT, which does amazing things. And if we had thought about it earlier, there are some examples in the New York Times of, I think one of the nice examples is the request in the language of the King James Bible to approach God about a problem of a sandwich that has been caught in a VCR. And it does a very good job of that, starting with verily and ending with amen. And it's just superb. There is another one that almost brings tears to one's eyes. This is where the instruction is, this is a letter to be written by Santa Claus to a child, explaining that Santa Claus is not real. And the richness of it is unbelievable. You know, we didn't plan this, otherwise it would have been worth reading. It explains why the parents did this. And you know, they lied to the child out of love. And, you know, that the child should not hold it against them. And it's all just very, very touching. So I saw those things this week. I saw an exam in behavioral economics at the University of Michigan where there were 5 essays to be written, and the TAs scored the essays, and they did for all the other students. And ChatGPT got a B+. Now, what is very striking is that ChatGPT, as a piece of software, doesn't have contact with the internet. It does not have access to the internet. So it's all the knowledge that it has gathered, but it cannot check facts. So it still makes silly mistakes. I mean, if you ask it for, you know, when was Egypt transported across the border to Canada, and you ask for a date, it will produce a date for you. So it's not that it knows exactly what it's talking about. But at the same time, the level of sophistication that it's achieved is stunning. And what is really stunning to me is the progress that has been made in the last 6 months. So 6 months ago, well, a little more than 6 months, there was a release of GPT-3, which was considered very impressive. And ChatGPT is qualitatively superior. I mean, it really feels like something else. It's a new level. And this is a very short time. So one of the things that I find very exciting, and that's why I wanted to talk about it, is that there seems to knowledge in that field, the artificial intelligence, the progress of artificial intelligence, seems to be exponential. That is, it's accelerating all the time. And the gap between one achievement and the next one is very, very short. And by a measure that I saw of the computational power that goes into this, we know about Moore's law, that the speed of the chips doubles every 18 months. The computational power of the models that are being applied in artificial intelligence doubles every 3 months. And that is an incredibly fast speed. So that's what I'm excited about this week.
So I have received a demonstration of the power of this piece of software. A board member, I just came out of our board meeting at Yale, and board members sat down next to me and said, give it a task. So almost as a joke, I said, I asked it to write a thank you letter to an alum of Yale University who studied political science at Yale and now has given us $1 million toward research, a gift of $1 million toward research in political science. I was just making this up, right? And it produced a thank you note that I would give a B+ to also, like the behavioral economics exam. And in fact, it did a pretty good job. And if I'd given it a few more details, it might have gotten to A-. And so that got me thinking about original thought and creativity and critical thinking, what we claim we are inculcating among our students. If in fact We are developed, and you know, I'm not a Luddite. I'm as excited about the technology as Danny is, but I wonder, you know, what does it mean if we can get, you know, at the low level, at the micro level? What does it mean for universities if students can produce B+ work simply by asking this piece of AI to do it? And what does it really mean more globally if, in fact, we don't have to harness our own creative powers to produce, you know, insights in behavioral economics, let alone a thank you note to a donor? What does this mean? What does this mean? How is it going to change what our students want to spend their time doing, and even what our faculty?
I mean, you know, for one thing, I think it's going to change the way that students are educated. This is going to happen this year. I mean, there are not going to be essays, you know, to be written at home. There are not going to be take-home exams. We're going to be moving more and more, I suppose, to oral exams. But, you know, that's just a minor change. But basically, this kind of software and the next 1 or 2 or 3 iterations of it are going to destabilize society as we know it, because this piece of software is going to write legal opinions better than most attorneys. This piece of software is going to be producing medical diagnoses when given a test better than most physicians, if not all physicians. And so what we think of as white-collar occupations are going to be disrupted in a profound way, and this is going to happen soon, because when you imagine a couple of years from now, a couple thinking of divorcing, and instead of looking for their attorneys, they will use that piece of software to prepare a legal argument. And this, so what this is going to do just to that profession, and let alone many other professions, is pretty exciting. And I think quite worrying. With respect to creativity, I wanted to say the idea that AI can be creative, that was demonstrated a few years ago. There is an organization, DeepMind, in London, owned by Google, by Alphabet, that developed a program that beat the world champion in Go. And then they developed the next program after that, which beats that earlier program. And it was built by teaching the piece of software the rules of the game, and they did that for Go and they did that for chess, and having the software play with itself several million times. And what I wanted to mention is I'm not a good chess player, but I can appreciate a good chess game. The most beautiful chess games that I have ever seen were between AlphaZero, one of these programs, and another program that beats world champions, and which AlphaZero was systematically beating. And what's the difference? In that other program, there is a human input. Grandmasters put in their wisdom into that program. AlphaZero has no human wisdom, and it is superior. So that's, in terms of creativity, we can really expect, it's not going to stay at B+ for a long time.
So I also think about, both as a psychologist and as a university administrator, the mental health crisis on many of our campuses, right? Gen Z seems more fragile than previous generations. They want more help. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression. 65% of student bodies seek counseling, professional counseling in any given year. And the approach has just been to throw more resources at it. Keep hiring professionals, try to stay ahead of the tidal wave. And it's pretty clear that that's not going to work. because the demand seems insatiable, and the expense is not inconsequential. And so I've also seen little bits of demonstrations of a kind of psychotherapy from this kind of AI. And it passes the, I don't know what you would call it, the psychologist's Turing test, right?
Yeah.
You can't distinguish whether the responses are being generated by a therapist or by artificially. And I think the opportunity to address this crisis is huge. And we will finally be able to put to a test a belief that people in the psychotherapy world have often had. I was taught this when I was studying clinical psychology, that the relationship is an active ingredient, right? It's not a filler ingredient. It's not an inert ingredient. But maybe it isn't. And we're going to know here in the next year or two how effective this is.
I think actually on that one, my guess is that we already know. Because cognitive behavior therapy, which is really a set of recipes that, you have to do it intelligently, you have to do it with some flexibility, but this is certainly not beyond the powers of...
And it's effective.
And it's
you can
effective
get it
within 10 hours or 12 hours. So this is coming. That's another profession that will be profoundly disrupted. And how professionals are going to interact with those programs and what is going to happen within the profession. There was a belief early on that people could use computers as tools. They could use software as a tool, and they would control it. And there was a belief that teams made up of one human and one computer, that would be the superior, the best. So Garry Kasparov, when he was defeated by Deep Blue, I think in 1998, he, for several years, proposed the idea of teams because he thought that computers play in a recognizably mechanical and stupid way. And he thought that teams would be better, a combination of a grandmaster. And it turned out that the software doesn't need the grandmaster. And actually, they no longer compete against grandmasters. So humans compete at a lower level among humans. That's the world champion. And software competes at a higher level against software. And my guess is this is going to happen a lot and in many areas, because we do know that when software comes close to a human achievement, just give it a little time and it will be far better. And the reason is that their ability to learn from experience is so far superior to the human ability, because if you have self-driving cars, they're all learning from each one's experience. And this is something that simply cannot be matched by a human. So,
Danny, what do you think the chances, though, are that other factors will prevent the total disruption that one might predict? The analogy is, 10 years ago, when we all thought MOOCs, right? Learning, through massive learning opportunities from an instructor at a distance, either synchronously or asynchronously, was going to revolutionize higher education, right? We would no longer need to be in classrooms anymore, and the like. And it certainly changed higher education. Our reach, I can reach many more students than I once was able to. And it certainly changed many universities' senses of themselves and who their students are. And it certainly encouraged less standing on a stage and lecturing and more assigning lectures for homework. But at the end of the day, it didn't really disrupt. We're all kind of doing, my university, your university, they look pretty similar than as 20 years ago.
You know, I have a couple of things to say about that. In the first place, that disruption has just begun. And, you know, we haven't seen the end of it, because once it becomes clear that one can get a Yale-level education from software, Yale is going to change. And, you know, then the advantage that Yale and Ivy Leagues and major universities have, which is the social contacts among students, that can be separated from education. I mean, you know, I think that completely new forms of interaction and education are likely to emerge even there. But my more important point is that the changes in education and these changes that you can actually, a piece of software can produce, can make human work unnecessary. It's not only that you take some humans, human teachers, and you can spread around their wisdom more effectively than before. Here, you don't need human wisdom. It's a different development. It's a bigger one.
You know, I'm sure there must be some dissenting opinions in the room. I'm positive John has a dissenting opinion. And I'm sure you do as well, Carol. You want to say anything about this? No, John?
John, did the Jesuits anticipate artificial intelligence? I think we're about to find out.
Well, first of all, this has become a theme because of Ron for me today and tomorrow. I'll allude to this perhaps tomorrow. Sesame Street had an episode and a technique it used again and again where it said to children, which of these doesn't belong with the others? So I think I'm the illustration tonight of someone that doesn't belong with these two brilliant men. I said to this table when I sat down that I was playing the obverse of the role of Mr. Jefferson as I sat down and lowering the average IQ of the table by 10. But Peter, of course, with his wisdom, and I should say that he's one of the great American university presidents that I know and have observed over the last 20 years.
Thank you.
But he's anticipated my answer. I am high school, college, and doctorate in religion, educated by the Jesuits. Andra moyene pe musa polutrapan has malapala plankthe epitroies. And I could go on with the Odyssey if you wanted me to in Greek. I couldn't speak to a person on the street of Athens because I know only classic Greek. There is, and of course this is anticipated, that it may well be that that the social aspect that means so much in the university that captures most of our attention, the model of the university, which is the coming of age 18 to 25-year-old. Actually, that's only about 40% of the college population in the United States, and even less when you get outside the United States and deal with refugee and displaced communities and people. But right now, when we think of the Yales of the world or the NYUs of the world or the Haifas of the world, we're thinking a lot about things that don't go on in the classroom and don't go on in an intentional way. There's the serendipity of the social encounter, which was the heart of Jesuit education. The Jesuit high school, as much taught on the basketball court in pickup games or in a classroom with the debating team. And I don't hear anything from our two principal speakers that gainsays that. I think it's a both and. I'll just say this, that 5 years ago, as I headed toward my 60th year of teaching, I felt it was important for me to fly every 2 weeks from New York to Abu Dhabi to teach my class there in person. When COVID came and I began to teach on Zoom and overcame it, I saw all of a sudden how both and worked. And I could be present for my students in the 2 weeks between our classes and our serendipitous conversations that did occur. So I wouldn't say I'm a dissenter. You tried to tar me with that brush just to prove that I didn't belong in the picture. But to use an analogy to Supreme Court opinions, I would say I'm submitting an opinion concurring. But I don't want to fail to emphasize the importance of the ineffability of the education of the soul that will not be captured. I mean, we are humans, and we may not be as smart on some measures or as good at chess on some measures as the computers, but we still are humans, and that humanity, when I go down, as I've now done 20 times, into the Grand Canyon, I see myself in the presence of a 2 billion year old geological clock, and you feel, as you get to the 1 mile down, the 10-mile trail down into it, you're out of recorded history, and you feel utterly insignificant. And then you say to the canyon, I admire you, I'm in awe of you, I see you as part of the great creation that has been gifted to me as a human who can love and who can appreciate. So I think we're going to be in a both-and world, and not simply a world that is dominated by AI, no matter how advanced it gets. And I curse you for having put me on the spot and exposed me.
So in conclusion, I have 2 stories to tell. One about you, Danny, which you don't even know. The year was, boy, I don't even remember now. It was in the late 70s. I can't remember the exact year. I was the equivalent of a freshman at the Hebrew University, and I was a psych major. And I hated it. I despised it, except for one classroom. I looked at my schedule for the second semester, and there was a course, Statistics for Psychologists. And I rolled my eyes, and I slouched into the classroom, and there on the stage were 2 people, you and your partner, it was the most amazing class I ever took. You stood there arguing among yourselves, you and Tversky. And for a freshman, this was the most amazing opportunity to get insight into how the world of psychology opens up when you produce numbers in a manner that I never even thought possible. And that was a long, long time ago. And Peter, I have a story from a more recent time, which I'm almost hesitant to mention. And I asked Peter to actually censor himself. A couple of years ago, Peter came to the university. Both these gentlemen over here have honorary doctorates from the University of Haifa. And Peter is the most recent one. And his lecture centered on a picture of President Clinton, which we will leave a little vague, I think, but an analysis of behavior of politicians under very unique circumstances. And so I have fond memories of both of you at a personal level. This room is full of people who I have fond memories of, who have moved on and are elsewhere right now. Thank you all for coming. We are now going to have dinner and enjoy ourselves. Thank you both very much
Thank you.
for spending some time with us.